Good evening, good evening. We're a little bit late, or a lot of bit late, but we're here, right? Nonetheless, we are here. I will get started momentarily. Just want to allow some people to get the notification and filter in, once they actually see us live. Interesting topic tonight. Pills versus injection. Pills versus injection. Or shots versus pill. So we're gonna just give it a few minutes to allow a few people to filter in, and then we will get into it. I want to allow some individuals to get the notifications that we are on. So we're gonna give it a few minutes. All right, guys. So we're gonna give it about another minute, and then we're gonna jump right into our topic tonight. Just wanted to allow a few people to get the notifications that we were actually on tonight. We are late, but we're gonna do this regardless because we got to show up no matter what. We're gonna be talking pills versus injection, and then I wanted to get into BMI. There's a physician who I don't have his video ready, and with me being late, I don't want to spend a bunch of time there. But I'll actually probably start with that next Sunday, just showing his video, sort of kind of like a rebuttal. But since I don't have it queued up, what I'll do is I'll actually have that first thing next week. But I will, actually talk about it tonight. So in about 30 seconds, we're gonna just jump right in and get going. Appreciate the wait. Appreciate your patience. But it should be a good one. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Um, I uh, threw a title out there: pill versus injection, um, and then ideal BMI. I mean BMI versus ideal weight. Right. Hey, Life of Vivi, how are you? Glad that you could chime in here tonight. And please like the stream if you actually are here and click the notification bell so that way the algorithm, we train them to actually show you videos that you prefer, and the bell will notify you when it is that I am live, so that way you guys don't miss these episodes. Okay. So let's jump right in. I'll start with the overview. So injectable GLP medications like Wegovy and Zepbound generally yield stronger weight loss results, 15 to 20% body weight, um, and require less frequent dosing. once weekly, compared to daily oral pills, 12 to 14% body weight. However, pills offer convenience for those who prefer to avoid needle or strict storage requirements. So we'll come back to that word convenience in a moment. Injections, Wegovy, Zepbound. Effectiveness. Currently the most potent option in clinical trials, participants using injections lose an average of 15 to 22% of their body weight. Now they said in trials, and in trials were 72 weeks, between 68 and 72 weeks. Dosage frequency, administered just once weekly. Flexibility, can be taken at any time of day, with or without food. If you miss a dose, you can usually take it up to 2 days before the next scheduled dose. Drawbacks, requires refrigeration and self-injection, which can cause anxiety or mild skin reactions, right? So that is the summary for Wegovy Zepbound. And if I wanted to push just a little bit farther, you have retatrutide, which actually within the next week or so we should get um, some peer review studies. But we do have phase 3 results floating the internet based on what the company said that it's offering up to 28.7% weight loss at the highest dose, right? So, and that was with an 80-week trial, right? And they did go into maintenance with that one, showing that you basically could get, I want to say, continue to lose weight up to, they did up to 104 weeks. And, out of that, they actually got the prediction that in order for you to actually maintain your loss, you would need to actually stay on uh, the highest tolerated dose, right? Or let's say the most tolerated dose, right? Not highest, but most, because it don't have to be the highest. And wherever that is, whether it be 10 or 15, that's where you want to stay at to maintain the majority of your weight. You could come down to the 5, but you may see some weight regain. Now, obviously, the in betweens, 7.5, 12 and a half weren't necessarily studied. So or maybe they have, but they haven't released that. So that's what we have to go on. All right. So pills. Let's jump into the pills. Pills, oral Wegovy and orforglipron, which is also known by Foundayo. Effectiveness, highly effective, though slightly less potent than injections on average, leading to about 12 to 14% body weight loss in the trials. The frequency is taken daily. Flexibility requires a strict. Now, before I read this part, I do want to say there's a vast difference in flexibility with oral Wegovy versus Foundayo, right? So let me just read it and then I'll break it down. Requires strict timing, routines, taking it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach with a minimal amount of water and waiting 30 plus minutes before eating to allow the stomach to absorb it. Now, when it comes to that's the Wegovy. Now, when it comes to orforglipron, we're told that you don't have to. It doesn't matter. You can take it any time of day, and you don't have to eat. You don't have to wait a specific amount of time. So that I feel like could be more convenient, right? Because I said we're gonna come back to the convenience. Now, drawbacks: missing a pill requires skipping the dose for the day rather than doubling up. However, they travel easily and do not require refrigeration. Okay. Um, so the thing is with that, and what I mean by that, when I say with that, uh, convenience is for some people being able to do something once a week, right, versus daily. So in the sense of convenience that they're obviously speaking about is more storage based, right? And the anxiety that you might not have to deal with doing an injection. So that's where I think that their convenience is, right? So let me keep going before we get into what we're gonna get into. So shared considerations, right? Side effects. Both forms carry similar risk of the gastro side effects like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. Cost and coverage. Insurance coverage for these medications can vary significantly, making it essential to check with your specific plan. So that is pretty much just an overview of pill versus injection. So I'll give you my personal take, and then I'll actually jump in the chat to see what your personal take is. So for me, what it is that you know, how it is that I do you have to take the Foundayo at the same time every day? No. So I'm gonna get back to that in 1 second. So here's the thing. Now I feel like through all of the investigation that we've done scientifically, the trials, the peer reviews, um, to imply that the pills. Well, I'll tell you this. Let me back up. So the inspiration behind this topic came from a young lady who I know is actually taking the pills. That actually said that it is her belief that the pills will actually be better than injections and pretty much be more used, right? So now she might be half right, right? Now, the reason why I say that she might be half right is because they may be used more often because they are the least expensive option. That's first. Least expensive branded option. Okay. For the most part. Now, obviously, there's differences in insurance, but for out of pocket, they are, and I can look up the list pricing and give you that later. But and so I feel like the accessibility is there, right? And if we're gonna just talk about the pills, let's say Wegovy, right? I won't say Foundayo because Wegovy is already a household name from the injection. So people have familiarity, so they're actually kind of comfortable by hearing the name, right? What it doesn't have is a high rate of weight loss. At least that's not what we've seen in the trials. And that's not what I generally see when I actually peruse the internet. Most people that I see, and clinically, because personally, people have said that they don't feel the loss and as much of an effect, especially if they were actually going from pen back to pill in maintenance, not necessarily doing the pill for the first time, but I've kind of heard the same thing. People feel like it's a lot to do for less loss, right? So, and what I mean by that is you actually do have to make sure that you take this pill daily for the maximum effectiveness, right? Because just like any other pill, the main thing that pharmacies have an issue with as far as outcomes are concerned is lack of adherence, right? Adherence is something that's very difficult. You start, with that A, like when you first, getting you go to a new class and the professor told you, everybody starts with an A, but it's up to you to keep that A. Same thing, when it comes to pills or anything for that matter, you need to take it, you need to follow the directions and be consistent. So the one thing that droves of people, generally are, pretty bad at is taking pills daily, right? And some actually downright just hate it, because they forget. The main thing you hear, oh, I forgot, so, I'll take it later. But with this, if you forget it, you have to wait till the next day. And again, I'm just talking about Wegovy, right? Now, orforglipron is a little bit different. Why? Because it doesn't matter the time of day that you take it. You can take it anytime and you can take it with or without food. It's up to you. So pretty much it's like take the pill at your leisure. So with that being said, Foundayo could be pretty, I think, pretty convenient. You know what I mean? But let's go back to the results. Those results are hovering around 12%, and that was at the higher dosing and being taken correctly. So now you have to factor in when it is that you're not actually taking it, correctly, because that happens too. There's times where, like I said, you're gonna forget, and it becomes less efficacious because you're not taking it as prescribed. Because that's the one thing that most doctors, pharmacists, try to like tell patients is, please make sure that you, take your medication as prescribed because it matters, right? So with all that being said, and I know it's a mouthful, I don't believe that the pills are going to be, anytime soon, the thing that takes over. Now, I do believe that based on the almighty dollar, which actually comes down, what things boil down to. Yeah, there is a possibility that there'll be, as you saw when Wegovy first rolled out, a lot of prescriptions and a lot of people trying it, right? But we're talking about long term. I think that unless they could be more efficacious, you're probably not going to see them take over, right? Because people do want to try them for maintenance. So I'm looking at beyond the experimental phase, which is where we are, because I know that that's kind of like what it is. We're in the experimental phase of everything when it comes to the pills, right? So that's kind of what you're seeing. But beyond that, you're not gonna probably. I mean, long term, I don't see a pill trumping a subcutaneous injection anytime soon, right? Because the subcutaneous injection yields results that pills can't yet see. And the one thing that the young lady that actually was doing pills versus the injection left out was that, we have phase one trials going on currently of medications that could even be taken monthly. Now, I'm not saying that's something that I'm gonna dive into personally, or that I would, subject myself to, but the option will be there, right? Because the pipeline is full of so many things that people haven't seen and don't know yet, but it's there. So pills got a long, long, long way to go, because at the end of the day, we're talking about results, right? I think cost, convenience, and fear of needles will make the pills popular. Whether they will overtake the shots remains to be. Absolutely, Sydney. That's the point, in a nutshell of what it is that I'm conveying, right? The cost and the convenience, especially a Foundeo, meaning you can take it at any given time. It don't matter if you eat or not. That's pretty convenient. You can throw it in your purse, don't got to worry about temperature. So there are good points to be made. But at the end of the day, right? It's about results, right? Because what's the one thing that plagues people all the time, day after day, week after week, month after month? It's the actual scale, right? So is my weight going up or down, and am I losing body fat and gaining muscle? Those are the things that actually drive people, and drive actually, the wanting of utilizing these treatments. So if you can't give me that, then I'm probably not going to be, especially once I actually get on the treatment and I figure that out, and I find out that, it's not giving me the loss, that it is that I'm looking for. And then by the time I get to the higher doses, like the 25 milligram, so I guess I should say the Wegovy has a 1.5, a 4, a 9, and a 25. Those are the different, and they're all different. If you go into my I don't think I actually put the Wegovy in there, but I know I put the Foundeo pills in there, different ones, because when it first started, they had some fraud going on. When it first was released, back in January, there was some fraud going on where people on the internet were trying to get the bottles so that way they could sell, fraudulent medication to people. I was listening to a Mayo Clinic doctor the past week. We want to say that there are 100 different weight loss drugs currently being developed, and I believe it too, Sydney. Will all of them come to market? Probably not, because that's the one thing about drug trials, and these formulations that they come up with. All of them don't make it. In fact, most of them don't make it, right? Um, I want to liken it to, somebody, a primetime artist making, an album, right? They go through a whole bunch of songs before they decide on which one's going to make the album, right? And that's usually the ones that they feel like is going to be a hit, and I think that with the medications it's similar. You can have, because, don't quote me on it, but the average artist probably records 50 songs to try to get the 10 that's going to make the album. Sure, 90% won't make it to the market. Yes, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying right now. Yeah, but that does let you know that with Eli also becoming the potentially becoming the first $1 trillion pharmaceutical company. um it's an attractive market. So with it being such an attractive market, you're going to see a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of companies, flocking, to. I think Eli's stock is probably like $1,000 a share right now. So, you know what I mean? So you got a whole bunch of companies that's trying to like get in on that. And that's good for us because it creates competition. So the more competition, the better, because that competition is going to help to drive the prices down. So what we're experiencing right now isn't what we'll experience 5 years from now. Because realistically, let's think about 5 years ago, right? Because 5 years ago, in the midst of COVID, you had people using off-label Manjaro, you know what I mean? For well, using Manjaro off-label for weight loss, you know what I mean, and paying that $1,000 out of pocket, back then, some when they found out that you could use it, for weight loss, and look at where we are now. We have actual Zepbound, Wegovy, so that way, people could stop saying that the medication was taken from diabetics and, what have you. So we are at a place now where we weren't then, you know what I mean? So I know 5 years from now we'll be at a place we aren't now. So that is something that should be exciting to all of us, because that means that the prices that we're talking about right now, we probably won't have to deal with then. It'll be, it's going to still be a respectable price, but it won't be anywhere close, I believe, to what it is now. They may be cut in half by then. You know what I mean? I feel like they may be, because of so much competition. Which some may say still are a bit expensive, but in all actuality, if you bring it down to some of the lower compounding prices, not so much for the effects that they have on, the body, right? Because these medications are literally like doing things that people, only seeing, other a cocktail of other drugs along with a whole bunch of other with surgery and a whole bunch of other things be able to do, and what I mean by that is like it's literally like refreshing organs. You know what I mean? And I can speak for myself when I say that. Hey, what up, Armsy? When I say that, just looking at my kidney EGFR, my kidney filtration rate, going from the lower 70s to nearly 80, right? I got to give a shout out to the treatment, for helping me get there, right? Now the treatment also allowed me to actually cut half of my blood pressure medicine, because I was taking hydrochlorothiazide, which is pretty much a diuretic that, actually could be a little rough on the kidney. And I don't take that, and I haven't taken that in months because I haven't needed it, along with everything else, that it is that I'm doing. So that actually helps, you know what I mean? So I do know, obviously, because I did say I was going to get into my labs, which I'll do in a minute. But just knowing that these particular medications, namely, tirzepatide is able to actually affect all of your organs the way that it affected mine personally, uh, you got to give it up. I think we just got to give it up. You know what I mean? To the scientists for actually doing this. You know what I mean? Giving us this type of treatment. You know what I mean? Hey, Jen, what's up? Um, so there's that. I just feel like the pills are going to be a good thing for a lot of people. I'm glad they're around. I'm glad they're an option. But I think that you have to step back and look at, and I'm about to segue into the BMI ideal weight conversation. So I think that you do got to step back and assess your situation, right? That's kind of how I see it, because I think they're good for who they're good for, and I think that if you had, like, let's say, a lesser or lower weight, you know what I mean? Like they can absolutely work for you. You know what I mean? Like, let's say you somebody that probably only got about 10 or maybe 15% max body weight to lose, I think it's probably the thing. You know what I mean? But if you're somebody that needs to lose, 35% of your weight, you know what I'm saying? What's up, Teddy? I didn't know Teddy was in here. I see Jen saying hey to Teddy. So what's up, Teddy? And anybody that I missed, because I was trying to go over my pill versus injection spiel before I got into the chat. So what up to everybody that's in here that decided to be with me, or on this Sunday evening. I do appreciate you all. I do not take it for granted that you decide to stop here and visit with G's 101. We appreciate the growth. So I mean, even though small, we are still growing, and I see it. So like this will segue into my BMI versus ideal body weight conversation. I don't have the video queued, but I'll probably start my live next week with it, so you can, and that way you guys can go back. But there's a physician, 70-year-old guy, who actually believes that the proper BMI, and he goes by the BMI, he's a believer in BMI, for a female is 21, or maybe less. And the proper BMI for a male is 22 from a longevity perspective. So what he believes is that the average human being that actually lives in that thin of a body has the best opportunity to live between 97 and 103 years. So for an average of 100 years, because he believes life expectancy should be about 100 years for those that actually take that approach. And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, and again, I'm gonna show the video probably next week. I'll probably put it. I actually put it in my post, and then you guys can actually go and look at the video that I'm referencing. And then he also said that any civilization that you see people living to be 100 are, extremely thin. You know what I mean? He believes that you should be extremely thin. So now, here's the thing that I felt like he didn't address at all, and that was muscle. He left out muscle. And I'm like, so you having a longevity conversation, but nowhere did you talk about muscle. You only talked about losing fat. You know what I mean? And he was all about, actually eating vegetables. You know what I mean? Not too much on the meat, but primarily a vegetable diet. He wasn't vegetarian, but He said that, meat should be very, very, very lowly consumed. But he did have, I think, videos of a vegetarian type lifestyle in the past. So my thing was, I said, but what about muscle? What is treatment like the former model Twiggy thing? No, well, he was saying that men should be 22 or below and women should be 21 or below. So whatever that is for your frame. So for me, that means that I probably at 6 foot tall should be right around 155, probably around 155, 160 maybe. You know what I mean? Like that would be kind of like where he think that uh I should land. I had to step away a minute. That's cool, BV. Thanks for coming back. We do appreciate that. Glad you could come back. No, the BMI number, for the woman, he would like for most women to be around 21 and for most men to be around 22. So again, if I use myself, that would place me at like 155, maybe 160, somewhere around there, you know. And most know my goal is to be about 200, right? Because I factor in muscle. And he clearly cared nothing about muscle. So that was my point, because what I was getting at is, did he not look at sarcopenia and the different things that, a lot of our elderly that are, at those, like they like to call it fabulous ages. That's a fabulous age, if you could get to be in those years. But the one thing that a lot of them end up actually, having a shorter life is through falls. A lot of times they fall and hurt themselves, not having enough muscle or, to actually, uh, prohibit the the injuries that they actually end up sustaining, like the hips and the ribs and all of the other, right? Which causes them to, actually a lot of times become unstable and start to fall more often, because one fall oftentimes leads to another, right? So you begin to fall more often, and when you begin to fall more often, the probability, of mortality increases, because you don't know, what fall might cause what internally, right? So that was the striking part that he left out when he was saying that everybody should actually get to that. That would have to be right now. If I stripped away every ounce of fat, in my body, and I literally had zero fat, I would be 165 pounds probably. Based on I think my RINFA. So I would have to have absolutely zero fat, and we all know that there is. We essentially need to have at least about five if you're a male, 5 to 8, and as a female, 10, right? These are essential facts, or it'd be pretty hard, So therefore, it's not realistic when I actually take into account my muscle, right? Because like as most know, my muscle mass is about 154 pounds, right? Or about 70 or about 60%, right? So I'm one that carry a lot of muscle. So I would have to actually strip some of that away to get to the weight that he's talking about. So now, with us knowing how expensive muscle is, would we be willing to do that for the sake of what he considered longevity, to be that thin? I'm not buying his, like I don't buy into to what he was saying, because again, like I said, he completely forgot about muscle, and muscle is important, I do appreciate the likes too, because I see the likes, so I see them going up, and I appreciate y'all for rocking out with me on this Sunday night at 10 o'clock. I do not, it does not go unnoticed, you guys coming over and supporting the channel. I appreciate everybody, and hello to anybody that I did not see come in. I started my video talking about, I got inspiration for this video from a young lady named Corey. You probably see her. She's on a Wegovy pill. And she was talking about, she favors the pill over injection, and she believed that the pills would actually overtake the injections at some point. That's just her opinion. Um, and I disagree, you know what I mean? Because I think that at the end of the day, it all comes down to efficacy and results, right? So and I don't think that there's a pill yet, and it's probably gonna be a long, long time before we got a pill that's gonna actually be able to be taken once a month and cause near bariatric numbers. Like, let's say, retatrutide with the bariatric numbers, and the drugs that we have in phase 1 that are possibly being taken, could be taken once a month, right? So those things do exist. So when you say things like that, you might be leaving those particular injections out there, because what she said was that the pills are going to be improved to the point that it takes over the injections. But knowing how long it takes for all of this stuff to actually, be studied, ran through phases and approved, you have to pour tons of money into these different treatments in order for them to actually, come to market. So you would have to have, yeah, I doubt it, right, Jen? Yeah, I know, I doubt it too, but it still was worth the conversation because you have a lot of pills, a lot of people utilizing the pill within the community, um, and favoring them. But again, my brief synopsis was that you get higher results with the injections most times, right? And they will take both. Yeah. And also, you actually, it depends on the person, right? Because that's how I got into the BMI conversation. It depends on the individual, right? Because if you're an individual that actually has 35% of your weight that needs to be lost, like a lot of us obese individuals, you can't take a pill that's netting 12% and get there most likely, right? Because that's going to be a tough hill to climb, tough battle to fight. So therefore, I don't think that there's a pill being studied right now, most likely that's going to get you those type of results. So again, you're going to see a lot more pills because of the accessibility and the affordability, right? And people that have sheer anxiety about taking a pen, because she also admitted, and mind you, the person, she's a nurse too. I told you I know so many nurses. Like I follow a lot of nurses and vice versa. So that is a thing for whatever reason. But she actually is actually scared of injections, right? Yes, we have the obese and the overweight. Yes, you know what I mean. So my main thing was if but here's the thing though, right, Jen? A lot of these people who are on the pills are obese. They're obese, and I mean, to put it nicely, clinically obese. I don't want to say super morbidly is what a lot of people would coin it. And what I mean is like, I mean, just specifically because you guys don't know a lot of the ladies, but a lot of them are kind of in that 400 pound, near the 400 pound mark, So as a young lady, at an average height, 5'4", 5'5", at 400 pounds, a lot of them would probably, in order to get to, a healthy weight, lose about 200 pounds. You know what I mean? So if a pill is netting you 12% or 15% or 20%, even, let's just say, you're an outlier, and on the pills you get 20%. Yeah, we still are a ways away. You know what I mean? We still are quite a ways away, because we might possibly, get off half of what we need. We could possibly get 100 pounds off. It could possibly happen, right? If you're doing all of the things, I mean, you're very strict on everything, you could probably get 100 pounds off using that pill. But then what? Because now, if you stay with me, we still at 300 pounds, right? So if you still at 300 pounds, you're probably going to, want to get another 50 to 100 pounds more off, So to do that, you might have to step over to the injections, because they probably would be able to help, more so. How I see it is you have to evaluate yourself first, like get an evaluation from your physician and then evaluate your situation. I don't mean evaluate yourself, but evaluate your situation. Where do you start? Or no, where are you starting at? That's where that's the most important thing, right? What up, Grant? How you doing, man? We're doing pills versus injections and BMI versus ideal body weight. It's partly depends on your body type when it comes to BMI. It's a morphin and morphin. That's what helps determine how much muscle normally carried in 21. Yeah. So you doing two things. So yes. Now again, what you want to do is actually make sure you get a DEXA or get a Renpho Morpho Scan Nova, and make sure that And I always got to show people your Renpho Morpho Scan Nova, so that way you know where you are. Because we can't base it on BMI. We have to base it on how much muscle you have, right? So because if you carry a lot of muscle, it's going to be pretty difficult to get to a 20 or 21 BMI, without actually losing muscle, which is expensive. And actually, what actually is the key, other than your blood, to your health. You know what I mean? You need that muscle for mobility and protection, especially as you get older, right? Because what you don't want to be is, at risk, right? Two of those scales. Nice. Yeah, you got two of them. Sydney ain't messing around. She got two of them. Yeah, so that's the thing, like, you know what I mean? So that was his belief. And again, like I said, this is biology is highly individualized, and you have to make sure that you know what it is your measurements are, both fat and muscle, right? Because at some point, like a lot of us, because I think we got a lot of vets in here. When I get on, I usually have a lot of vets. I do have a few newbies, but if we're gonna just talk to the veterans, what has to happen is you got to kind of not focus so much on total body weight, right? Because total body weight is not going to actually be the key to your health, right? I know it's the most comfortable weight for my. Yes, and that's what it got to be, Sydney. You know what I mean? It got to be what's comfortable for you. But if we want to generalize, which is what I'm doing, I know that people that carry a good deal of muscle, probably can't be sitting around a 20 BMI. You know what I mean? Because that would take too much of their muscle. You have to actually lose muscle because, like I say, I can use myself. So if I'm using myself, and again, this conversation is because there's a doctor that actually had a longevity conversation and said that people that live to be 100 on average are people that actually have a BMI closer to 20, 21 for women and 22 for guys, right? That was his threshold, right? And again, we talk about threshold. So that means that somebody like me, he would probably he would like to see me anywhere between 140 and 160 at the highest, right? 140 and 160. Now, remember what I said to you guys. My muscle mass is 154 pounds, right? My muscle. So I would have to actually strip every bit of my fat off and lose some muscle. And do any of us want to lose muscle? No, we don't. So this is why his theory right away just doesn't stand up for me. Like not even for a moment. You can't be, because again, he's not looking at protecting your mobility, right? Yeah, wow, Grant. That's pretty small, like for people that are muscular. Now, if you're not muscular, then maybe, just maybe, it might not matter too much. But again, speaking for myself, that would not work for me. And we're not talking about fat, right? Because again, men can actually hold essentially 5 to 7% and be okay. You probably wouldn't feel well, and the reason why I say you wouldn't feel well is because of the body types. Yeah, for sure, body type. You probably wouldn't feel well, because at the end of the day, a lot of people that actually that have that extreme s- small, lower percentage of body weight actually struggle with fatigue just as much as people that are actually have very high body weight. Because the other end of the spectrum, right, where you got that super duper low body weight, like body fat. I'm sorry, body fat, you actually struggle because you actually are all the time in such a calorie deficit that all you can do is focus on food. You have no focus. You can't focus on, you can't actually focus, and you have no mental clarity because your body is actually taking all of its energy just for you to function, right? So this is what we talk about when we talk about essential fats, because essential fats are important. And for the ladies, it's even more, the 10% is even more important for hormonal reasons and pregnancy, right? So that's why I said that I think that, you got to take that with a grain of salt, his longevity conversation, because it doesn't fit most, because he's leaving out muscle and body type, right? And he's pretty much making everyone pretty much clones. You know what I mean? We have to be clones of each other to be able to all fit that same exact body type. Now, this man was a fabulous age of 70, so he's from a different era, and these were his thoughts. He was a doctor. But he felt like everyone that actually had had the ability to live to be 100 actually had, those particular uh BMIs. You know what I mean? It was 21 for at the most. And again, we talking about at the most, 21 at the most, or ideal. Let me say ideal was 21, and for ladies, and 22 for the guys, right? But like I said, I'm just using myself to make it make sense. That would mean that right now I would have to not only lose every bit of my body fat, I would have to be 0% body fat. I will also have to lose a few pounds of muscle, right? In order to actually be in the category that he says I would have to be in for longevity. So, and I don't think most of us are interested in that because again, a lot of people say, like Sydney just said, her weight is that she has for her is where her happy place is. So we all have to find that. And if we have lack of mobility, I'm not sure that any of us are going to be too happy because we're not strong enough to actually lift something over our head or balance ourselves if we're about to fall. Or if we do fall, we can't heal appropriately or fall or start to fall more because that's kind of what you actually end up with if you don't have enough muscle, right? So there's that. That's kind of like where I wanted to go with that whole little thing. We started with the pills versus the injections, and yes, I feel like the injections are going to still trump pills because it's a subcutaneous thing. Um, and that's hard to beat, with a pill. The pills have to actually be wrapped in what we call snack technology in order to actually not be eaten up by stomach acid, right? Whereas the injections, you actually are injecting subcutaneous into subcutaneous fat, or depending on what it is that you are taking, or what type of injection, it could be intermuscular, right? So that's pretty much that's kind of hard to beat, you know what I mean? With something that has to be ingested and travel through the stomach and be broken down and metabolized and all of that. So I think that argument could be null and void. So before I go any further, I'm gonna jump into the chat just to see if there's anything that I might have missed. Then I'll go on the rest of my thoughts for the night. So we got Teddy in here. Shout out to Teddy. Shout out to Vivi. Shout out to Sydney. Shout out to Realm Mail. Shout out to Jen. Everybody saying hello, hello. Uh, Sydney was talking about the body types. Grant says that yes, I'm against the BMI numbers. Laugh out loud. I already have two of those skills. I know what most people are comfortable with. I know what's the most comfortable weight for myself. I can't speak for anyone else. Grant says, wow, that's why I mentioned body types. Okay, yeah, so I kind of covered it. Yeah, so I mean, all in all, yes. BMI is definitely something that I know. Listen, some of these topics are the same, but it's stuff that we hear and we deal with daily. Um, and it's just good to because these are ongoing conversations in the GO1 community. So even though I know it gets old to some, it's always a conversation because you get new angles, thrown at you like almost daily. You know what I mean? So it's always something to address or pretty much talk about. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on that. I know RMZ had a pretty decent video he dropped earlier today about the gray market and the efficacy, or let's say concentrations, the concentration and efficacy of the actual gray market retatrutide that individuals are injecting and not, getting the suppression versus the actual trials that people actually are seeing suppression in. And obviously, he got feedback in the comments on that particular topic from individuals that are more than likely probably utilizing gray market and kind of some kind of like fought back saying that they do get the suppression that the trials get. So I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? Who knows who's telling the truth? You know what I mean? At that point, and we're gonna get back to the blood work in a second, but I just want to segue to this for a minute, because at the end of the day, no one knows the exact formulation to the T that Lilly is utilizing to actually create, what it is that they will probably be releasing at the top of next year. So these other companies can only try the best that they can, and that's what they're doing. But at the end of the day, this is not. None of us really want it to be, pill versus injection, gray market versus brand, or any of these things. What we all cry out for is just safety, right? That's really what the actual uh the warning is, right? From us, from those. It's not about FDA branded versus non-FDA gray market pill versus none of this because outside the GLP-1 community, there is so many people that are against GLP-1s for silly reasons. You got people that are obese that's against obese people that are shunning them for actually taking their health in their hands and actually utilizing these treatments and losing weight, on a regular basis, all through TikTok and everywhere. And I think that in the community, we kind of need more harmony than anything, you know what I mean? But we also cannot allow blatant, disregard for safety and turn a blind eye, especially if we know better, right? So some of these conversations and these videos are needed because at the end of the day, if we don't, then who will, right? We do not want our community and people to actually fall ill because they actually are overdosing on medication at you know the behest of people that are giving them improper information who aren't qualified, right? And to clarify that, you don't have to be, a pharmacist, a doctor, or somebody that studies science to actually get on the internet and speak because this is your prerogative. But what I would say, if you are going to cross the line to start suggesting, offering, promoting, selling, you name it, products to individuals whom you do not know what their background or health history is, you should be careful because you do not know how it is that these particular peptides or peppers, whatever you want to call them, might affect that individual, especially when you don't truly know the sourcing and the concentration, right? And the sterility and the stability, all of the things that, you know, places that are regulated have to look for, right? Because if you get something that was stored improper, it probably loses is most likely going to lose its efficacy, right? And there's also small impurities, that actually come with people reconstituting these things, these treatments in improper conditions that can affect you, in a major way, right? So, we say all these things because we're actually watching that go on in the community now. And just like I suspected, I figured I was right, but now I know I'm right because I seen a little bit of it today. One of our influencers was doing it, and I thought so. But what they were doing is, they've moved over to actually start selling these peptides. You know what I mean? And that's what I thought. I said this is why their stances are what they are because they're encouraging people to use this stuff because now it's about the dollar. And they can't really be sure of where they're sourcing it. You know what I mean? And that's the scary part because now they're literally trying to encourage people to buy these peptides as affiliates through them. And we and let me be clear, this is not I'm not talking about compounded GLP-1. I'm talking about straight, peptide, different type of treatments. You know what I mean? Like these people are offering for people to put on their skin and inject themselves and all kind of stuff from these Chinese and gray markets, right? And it's just not safe, and it's all about a dollar. And I would say if you are a person that actually needs help, make sure that you start with your physician and then you guys vet the actual pharmacy that you actually are going to be receiving your compounded medication if you are going with compound instead of brand. Because again, I'm all for compound. I have nothing against compound at all. I don't even have nothing against a gray market if you can ensure, which is very hard to do, that the source that you're getting it from is proper, right? And that's why like that is a loaded thing to ensure that you're getting it from a proper source is very hard to do. Why? Because even the people that are testing these medications, they're testing it to see whether, you know, that it's authentic, which they might be able to tell you, hey, this is authentic, tirzepatide, Retta, this, that, and the third. But what it is that they can't tell you is whether or not it was formulated the appropriate way, whether or not the concentrations are balanced, right? They're not going to tell you that, you know what I mean? So that's even skewed. And then they get the letter of authenticity, like, oh, this is 99% this. You know what I mean? And because we have dual agonists now and triple agonists now, right? You telling me something that's 99.9% semaglutide is not helpful anymore because when it was a single agonist, it might have been. Now with dual agonists, you really can't tell me how much of this and how much of that because you really don't know, and you're injecting yourself with things that could be potentially harmful, right? Now we all know it comes down to money and affordability, and we wish that it was different, but and this is going to segue into the last part of the video. Don't be fooled by aesthetics over lab work, right? Because what I really would like to have is a show your lab work challenge. right? Because you got a lot of people that get on that look aesthetically pleasing, right? A guy can get on and say, hey, look at my muscle. Look at the, I'm getting gains and stuff like that, right? That stuff will make for some juicy docs in a few years. I will be watching, rubbing my feet. Jen, you ain't right. You ain't right, Jen. You ain't right. You ain't right. But yeah, you got guys getting on saying, "Hey, look at my muscle," and look at my physique. I did, but at the end of the day, we don't know what's going on in that body. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you got some muscle growth, but what else did you do? How much did it cost? Right? Because we know muscle loss is expensive, but those gains are expensive too if you got them in properly, right? Because you can look aesthetically pleasing and be sick as a dog, sick as a dog. That's what I would like to do with a lot of these guys that get on here and want to show, how they look aesthetically. Let's look at their lab work. You know what I mean? Because I guarantee you that it ain't all good. It ain't all good. You know what I mean? Because they're doing crazy things. So again, don't fall for the quick here and now, for the sake of actually wanting to look good. Because really at the end of the day, this is all about feeling good, right? We all want to feel good, not be sick, and do things the right way. None of us guys, not me, not RMZ, not anybody that come on here and talk about, people doing things improperly or unsafe, are doing it out of, hate. We're doing it out of love because we want people to know that, I'm I don't like to say the slow and steady because I was one of those guys that lost 3 pounds a week and all that, lost 80 pounds, over like 35 weeks, you know what I mean, and all that. But when it comes to safety, it should be kind of slow and steady. Take the time. You know what I mean. Do it the right way. So that way your results can be, ones that you can live with. You know what I mean, and you're not taking a risk. You know what I mean. So now, what I was talking about in my actual short that I got a lot of likes on, and I love the fact that not a ton of views, but I got a ton of likes. A lot of people like. I'll be just Cindy said I'll be watching those docs too. I got a lot of likes on was me talking about my blood work, right? So what I did was I input every single marker, and then when I tell you I got every marker done. I got every marker, health marker check, from my blood, the cancer screenings for my CDC panel, to my lipids, to my ALT, to my EGFR, to my prostate, to my colonoscopy, to my heart ultrasound. I got everything. I'm telling you, I got everything, top to bottom, right? I did all the things over the last several months, and everything came back better than good, nearly optimal for most categories. I put all of that into my Google, and the Google pretty much told me that these numbers were flawless and that I should continue to do. Now again, this is no everything that I'm saying to you is in my post. You can go look at every single all of my blood work. I put it in there, and you can see what those measures were and what I put in, and then exactly what Google told me. I actually, and my doctor, obviously, she said the same thing, but I actually put it up, so people could see, that it said to me everything that I'm doing now, from my working out, my hydration, my sleep, everything. Keep doing it because it's working. It's working because my numbers for my age, and my circumference, height, weight, everything, it looks amazing. Now, obviously, I still want to lose, 15 pounds, but outside of that, and mix and for it to be primarily fat, drop my body fat percentage by another 7 or 8%, right? But what I'm saying is men lie, women lie, numbers don't, right? I can get on here every week and talk a whole bunch of all kind of stuff to you guys, but if I ain't about it, if I'm not living it, then how can I, get on here and tell you, you know what I mean, what you should do? So that's why I do that. It's not necessarily to be braggadocious and all that, but a little bit, it is because it's hard work. It's hard work when you got bad feet, like me. You know what I'm saying? But the lifting the weights, the walking, you know what I mean. And I did a 3 mile walk yesterday too, because we did the Susan G. Komen walk for the cure. So that was good. And I actually didn't skip the day before. I did my regular walking Saturday. Yesterday morning, I got up, did the 3 mile, and I lift weights all week long. So Um, I'm just, working hard, staying hydrated, making sure I eat the right foods. I cheated a little bit because we had some I think we had like water ice and some pretzels yesterday too. So but I don't like to say cheated. I mean, I just call that living, right? You still gotta live. You better go ahead and brag. What's your goal weight, G? My goal weight is 200 pounds. I like to be 200 pounds, but more than that, I mean, heck, I don't really care about my weight. I just want my body fat to be under 20. So, hey, Shawnee, how you doing? I just want my body fat to be under 20, right? 15 is kind of like optimal, I think. So the closer I can get to that, it'll be great. Right now, my body fat percentage is 23. It goes between 23 and 24, like kind of like every week. Sometimes it's 24, sometimes it's 23. And that's where I'm at. So, and I know I could lose 15 or 20 pounds and still pretty much probably sit. Now, the way I've been doing it is pretty smart. So I know that I am losing fat, and not muscle because I did weigh myself today. And believe it or not, what has been happening for the last week with me is the scales going up 2 or 3 pounds because of my muscle. See, so when you actually tear your muscles, they actually retain water, when they're repairing themselves. So I wasn't at all, what I'm saying, concerned that I saw it go up because with me lifting the weights at the rate that I'm lifting, because I'm lifting more than I did. And I'm telling you, I see it. I see it. When I look in the mirror, I take my shirt off and all that, I'm able to see, like, you know what I mean? My chest is, like they're changing. Like I'm seeing changes. So this is why I tell people don't really worry so much about the scale. Look at your body, look at your clothing. How do you look in your clothing? Look at your pictures. How does it feel? Right. So my pants and my shirts and stuff still, what I mean, getting looser, and my actual body is looking different, in a good way in the mirror. So and I feel good, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm able to, go do a 3 mile walk, still work out. So and then my lab work is saying it, you know what I'm saying? It's all coming together. It's the synergy that you look for. So I feel really good about that. And I thank God for that, that I'm feeling way better than I did, you know what I'm saying, a year and a half ago. When I first started this journey. But like I said, I put my numbers out there so people can see that I'm doing all the things. I'm not just getting on here spitting all of this, stuff at y'all and then not living it myself. So fully working out again is your foot. Yes, I am back to fully working out. And yes, the foot, it takes about a year. Most know I had my surgery back in October, so we are probably more than like what if I quick math is what 7 months, 8 months in, something like that. So past that surgery, so my foot is healed. I still do have what they call zingers sometimes, which the doctor told me I would have, and it's just kind of like a kind of I don't want to say a sharp pain, but I do feel it like coursing through sometimes, but yes, what's even more beneficial that I like is that my other foot that I would have a lot of issue out, I haven't. Because my other toe has the same exact issue. But due to the medication and everything, I think that it's been pretty good because the working out and the walking that I'm doing, I couldn't have done before. So that other foot is not even messing up like it was due to the weight loss, the treatment, and the lessening of the inflammation. So again, I'm thankful for all of these things. There's the only thing that when I say I got everything top to bottom is I have not went and got a hormone panel, to check, testosterone and all that. That's my next thing. I'm gonna do that. I didn't because I felt good. My labs, all my other labs is good. My A1C, my glucose, my again my heart, because everybody know about their regular heartbeat. Um, my actual cardiologist, we did an ultrasound and the ultrasound came back normal. Normal. My ultrasound came back normal for my heart. And I always had an irregular heartbeat. And they actually called and said everything's normal. I had small enlargement because I had hypertension. Everything's normal. I'm telling you, man, the actual Zepbound treatment is actually working to refresh organs. I don't want to say I'll say repair. I like to say repair, but if it ain't broke, you know what I'm saying? It ain't really, I wouldn't say fix it, but I'll say reinvigorate. It's reinvigorating the organs within that within your body. The biggest complaint I hear about is the brain now, people with the brain fog and when we talk about the allodynia and the anhedonia, which we got the skin tingle and then you got the brain fog. Those are the two things that I hear a lot about. The thing that I know I'm segueing a little bit here, but the thing that I wish we could caution against is a lot of times when people hear something, they kind of like I don't want to say the wrong thing, here. So I'm like treading lightly, but and I don't want to say that, people aren't being honest. But I just feel like, a lot of times when people hear a certain thing enough, they kind of like start to feel it too. You know what I mean? Now I'll say I did have a little bit of skin tingling on the 15 and one of my legs for about 2 weeks when I first started the medication. Probably like when I got a month in, but it went away. It subsided. A lot of the fog, and again, I don't want to speak too candidly because with me being on week 73, I'm about to start week 73. I'm not one that's had 200 weeks of treatment. So maybe I can't speak for people that say they are getting the brain fog, but I'm seeing people that actually went off the medication, came back on the medication, go on the medication for 2 months, and now saying they got brain fog. You know what I mean? Like they the brain fog and they want to drop it. And what I began to wonder, is it really brain fog? Or did you already have pre-existing things that weren't dealt with? And now brain fog is the thing that kind of like is like the light bulb or the aha moment that that would be, sort of kind of like the easy answer, to what it is that you're feeling. Or do you really have brain fog, and all of that? Because maybe they do, you know what I mean? But with the rate that I'm hearing it, and again, we're talking about on the higher doses. We're talking about people that's on the 12 and a half, the 15, all that, because that's where they saying that you hear it most, like on those high doses. And with me being on the 15. Now I only been on the 15 for coming up on what 7 weeks or whatever. So I can't really speak, but I know I was on the 12 for a couple of months and now on the 15, and I haven't had none of that. You know what I mean? So maybe, it might hit. Now I'm not talking about people like people like Dave that was on it for years, maybe, but people like him that have such a big channel that people watch, I feel like some of them actually probably pick up those cues and hey, what up, Paul? How you doing, man? Um, and it's becoming a thing like that people report. I had traveling tingling in my back for months, but never talked about it. I've actually only heard one other person talk about it. I don't know. Many had that. Traveling tingling? So do you, well, you feel like that was attributed to the medication? Well, see, I know, Shani, you wasn't one that actually went to a high dose either. What I'm speaking to kind of is people that get to the higher doses because those are the ones who actually are where these main complaints of brain fog and all that come from. Even though I did hear some people talking about the brain fog on 7.5 now. You know what I'm saying? Titrated back down to 5. Some of them, but again, I just caution that we don't want this to be a thing that everybody is kind of utilizing this for other things that are really going on. Let's get to the bottom of what's really going on because one thing's for certain, most people, not most people, I don't like to say most people, some people actually had a lot of things mentally going on when they couldn't even afford the drug, right? You know what I mean? Before when they were like, hey, I can't even afford the drug and I got a lot of things going on mentally, you know what I mean? Where I'm kind of down, this, that, and the third. And now that you've taken the drug, it's like, well, mentally, it's the Zepbound. The Zepbound has me in a fog. You know what I mean? So that's all. I just want people to make sure that that's what it really is, and they're not just saying I got brain fog. Because they're hearing it's a thing. You know, do you really got brain fog, or do we got some other things going on? Other stressors and things like that we could work through in therapy and maybe other treatments. You know what I mean? And that's not to say it's not a real thing, because it's a real thing. It's a real thing. What was I talking? Oh, earlier I was talking about cost, right? We was talking about cost. Let me see. So the Wegovy pill, right, for the 1.5 milligram is 149. 4 milligram is 149, but it increases to 199 after August 31st, right? Brain fog for menopause. Shani said she had brain fog for menopause. So that's a good point. And then the 9 milligram and the 25 milligram are 299. So both of them, those are $300. But and it says if your commercial insurance covers the Wegovy pill, you may pay as little as $25 per month, or up to a maximum of up to a $100 maximum savings limit per month. So let me go back to what's up. But that's what I'm saying though, Shani. Like a lot of people actually won't admit that though, that they had these different things going on before the medication, and the medication is kind of like a scapegoat. And that's kind of like what I was trying to get at. Like, do you really have these issues, or is it more of a scapegoat for you? Because basically, it's an easy answer. You know what I mean? Where we going? So in Foundayo's monthly cost depends on the dosage. Insurance coverage just like the other one, but pretty similar. The 0.8 milligram, which is the starter dose, is 149. The 2.5 milligram is 199. The 5.5 to 9 milligram is 299. So the 14.5 milligram to 17.2 milligram is 349, but can drop to 299 a month if you refill every 45 days, right? So what you got there are 6 steps. So there are more steps with Foundayo as far as scaling than it is with the actual Wegovy pill, right? So you can go anywhere from point 0.8 all the way to 17.2, right? And the price goes anywhere from 149 to 349, which is a $200 difference, right? So that's kind of like, there you go. Because I know people were asking about that earlier, like, well, what's the actual price, right? So yeah, so that's that. There's that. But yes, so basically, we were talking about, for those that came in late, the pill versus the actual injection, because there's a young lady that's on the Wegovy pill that was saying that she thinks the pills are going to eventually take over. The pills are going to take over, and the injections will become inferior as the pills are actually created to be better and have better results. The problem with that is it takes a lot of money to actually investigate and create and perform trials that actually push out pills, I mean treatments in general. So I don't there are hundreds of things going on, but I don't know if there are pills that are going to see the type of efficacy we're seeing with injections that will actually allow them to take over. And if I'm being honest, Wegovy isn't as that convenient like Foundayo. Okay, so Foundayo you can take anytime, food or not food, and it doesn't matter. Whereas you have to actually take Wegovy, you know, 30 minutes after, at least 30 minutes after actually eating, right? So, and you want to kind of take it the same time every day. And just like anything else, I said, if you can take it once a week, it's more convenient than taking it daily, because the main thing with adherence when it comes to people taking medication is that they forget to take their pills, right? So I don't see it being convenient. Now it is more affordable, technically, maybe depending on your insurance, and probably a bit more accessible. So, and then we talked about ideal weight. So I'm just recapping for everybody. We talked about ideal weight and versus BMI. I'm sorry. BMI, there's a doctor that spoke that if you wanted to live to be 100, more than likely you would have to actually fall under a BMI of about 21 as a female and 22 as a man at the most. And I used myself and said what that looked like. That would put me at like 6 foot 155. And that means that I would have to have absolutely zero fat and even lose a little bit of my muscle, which I carry now at about 154 pounds of it. Right. So that won't work. That won't work for me. So that's what I mean. Like, you have to actually make it make sense. The actual pill versus the injection has to make sense because you have to evaluate yourself, right? You have to be, look at whether you're clinically obese or whether or not you're just overweight, right? So if you are, hey, Armadeus, hi, Armadeus. Oh, Armadeus, is that Paul? Oh, is that Paul? She called him Armadeus. So you go by the middle name for certain people, huh, Paul? That's funny. But because that threw me off, I'm like, who's Armadeus? But yeah, so you have to actually make it make sense for your ideal situation and your own body. Because if you're somebody who is clinically obese, 12% to 14% is probably not going to do the trick. You're going to need an injection and probably Retta, because if you 45, 50% obese, and you had that long to go, the pills might not do it. Oh, you call her South. Okay, y'all got the y'all got the y'all own individual names going on. Okay. Just a little confusing in the chat. I'm like, wait a minute, who's Amadeus? I get it now though. Yeah, so there's that. And then I was just calling him middle name because he likes music. Okay, cool. But yeah, so there's that. And then I was talking about my own, just recapping for everybody that came in late. And then I was just literally talking about my own blood work, and talking about how it was actually, I put the labs out there, and I was just happy that Google took all my measurements and told me that I have flawless numbers, flawless lab work, and that everything that I'm doing is the right thing and to keep doing it. And then I was just talking to people about the weightlifting, the walking, and everything that I'm doing. And then my own personal look, like I like how my body is starting to look in the mirror. And I just might be able to go shirtless in the at the pool on vacation next month. And the reason why I'm saying, well, I should say, well, almost next month. It's in July. I guess at midnight it'll be June. That's why I said next month. But yeah, so when I go to vacation, I'll be able to have a shirtless pic. So I guess wait for it, right? So I mean, there's that. And finally, I was talking about the community. We want to make sure that we have harmony. We don't want to be, pill versus injection, gray market versus FDA, because we have not enough people on the outside that's fighting the community, and either other obese that's fighting other obese people on TikTok, talking them down, and saying the most heinous and horrible things. And that's not where we want to live. We don't want to live in that kind of situation. You know what I mean? That's definitely not what we need. We need to have harmony, but at the same time, we can't be reckless. We got to be safe. So all of us guys that get on here and we talk about, people being safe, it's because we care. You know what I'm saying? I'll probably be next year for me. I gotta get rid of that baby fat. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gonna do it. You gonna get rid of that. You gonna get rid of the belly and be shirtless too. Shirtless too, man. I'm trying, man. I've never been shirtless, man. I haven't been shirtless since probably I was like, I think I was probably, I want to say like 10 years old, man. And that was embarrassing for me. I was 10 years old and I was actually forced because it was shirt versus skins. And I was actually playing basketball at a rec center. And I'm telling you, man, that kind of ate me up, man. That I had to take my shirt off because that's just the way it was. And I was so embarrassed of my body back then. That it was a hard thing. You know what I mean? So just those kind of little things do drive you, you know what I mean? Like, hey, that was hard for me. But fast forward to the day, after everything, hell, only thing I'm caring about, I got a little bit of fat in those flanks and around that stomach area that I ultimately might have to still end up doing some sort of lipo or something to get rid of. I was always skins. You was skins. Yeah, for some reason you got to take that shirt off. But a little bit of lipo, I might do that. You know what I mean? Just because, uh, you know, um, I want the finality of it. You know what I mean? So, but because I know I'm doing all the things, and it's only fair to myself to actually get 100% where I want to go. So there's that. So I hope I was actually entertaining enough for you guys. I didn't bore you guys to death, and you guys actually like hearing about all of the things. I'll like I said, try to queue up that video so you can actually hear it from that doctor. Probably next week, where he was talking about the living to be 100, and making sure that your body, that you were a BMI of 21 or 22, and completely forgetting about muscle, because that's what he did. Completely forgot about the fact that you do need to have some doggone muscle. You know what I mean? Because if not, you can actually become, frail, or either not be able to protect yourself from falling. And if you do, heal slowly, right? And then I did, in closing, just warn, let's be safe. Let's not, for the sake of making money and selling people stuff on the internet, that we, offer them, things that are dangerous, whether it be peptide cream, you name it, you know what I mean, and not be able to actually know that it's sourced from a safe space, because we can't say it's safe if we don't actually know the source, because sterility matters. Efficacy matters. Stability matters, right? It all matters, and we need to have safe stuff. All right, guys. So I'm not going to hold you that long. I definitely don't want to actually, I do appreciate everybody that chimed in, everybody that liked, everybody that saw the video, that rocked out with me on the live. I do appreciate all of the thumbs. If you didn't hit the like button, please do so. Hit the like button, hit the notification so you can know that we here every Sunday. We try to be here at 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get here at 8 o'clock tonight. I was a bit late. But nonetheless, we did it. Because I want to make sure that I always show up, for you guys. The channel is growing. I do appreciate that. So welcome to all of my new subscribers, all of my older subscribers. And I definitely want to make sure that, like I said, I thank everybody for spending their Sunday night with me. Watch the replay if you didn't get the beginning. And with that being said, like I always like to end all of my videos, Obesity Warriors, stand up. We in this together. Later.